So that's what's coming up in the realm of transportation planning.
Is that
I could probably put,
all of which will county?
yeah.
Okay, that's not just Mitchell.
Well, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of transportation planning outside of Spanish Valley. To the degree that we can include some projects between like Castle Valley and Cisco, we will. So there are, if you drive on the River Road out to I-70, instead of getting on I-70, you can turn right and go towards Cisco, which is traveling east. There are a lot of old bridges on that road, many of which need to be replaced. And so we don't have them in plans, and so we're not really at a state level until we do that. Another big project within this regional transportation plan that you'll probably hear about a little bit as we get into it is a bypass. So it's a long conversation. Well, it's to take Highway 191 and reroute traffic so that it doesn't have to travel through downtown. I saw a bypass proposal in like a document from the 1960s. In 2000, UDOT wanted to actually do it. And some people in the community, I don't know what percentage, but enough people in the community, including Main Street business owners, opposed that. And so it didn't happen. It's now just one of actually because the primary route where the proposed reroute is now in developed residential. So that will come up in this conversation about regional transportation plan. So I'll give you more background on that. In the realm of economic development, our office was formally tasked with doing economic development beginning in 2000. Prior to that, we were doing it informally, basically connection between industry and economic development. The city of Moab used to have an economic development coordinator. He unfortunately since passed away. He necessarily after he was let go from the city. So there was a period of time where nobody was like formally responsible for the economic development in this area. So some of the processes, documents that have been produced in the last 3 or 4 years from our office included the area sector analysis process. This was actually facilitated by University of Nevada, Reno, and Western Resources. But basically, we had a group of stakeholders identify which industry sectors would be desirable for this community based on feedback from a community survey and stakeholder input into what businesses would be a good fit for this community. Then we did a very heavy quantitative analysis
Hi, lady.
I'm still the oldest and the wisest here.
No, they're not, it's a
Oh, the Moab City waterfront.
That is gonna be you too?
It should be, it's just that one legislative act we're going through, and making sure it's good.
Oh,
If you're gonna do anything.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
If your intention is actually changing the thing, or. Yeah, I mean, just say it. Question becomes what?
No, it's facilitated by
This is Amy committee.
And we had no problems the whole time. And I was just
The whole thing just turns into.
chilly in March.
I have a really good friend.
Hey, Mars.
If I was sample shopping, I would tell them.
There.
Hey, Zachariah,
howdy.
you're leaving.
No special presentations.
Did you take them?
She's desperate. You're by yourself.
Hey, guy.
Actually, I get a talk to you that way.
I mean, I'm all for lawyers getting paid, but.
See, I can,
Many years.
Don't fall off.
There it is.
When crickets is.
Is on this.
she says she'll be a little bit late, but she'll be.
Well, is
If you want to stop.
Jeremy, you know if he's finished with his.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you want to go.
Hi, Ruth.
I didn't hear what you said. Cleaning what?
Is he finished cleaning rooms today?
No.
Boy, that's true.
Isn't that something?
But if you want to stop in after.
You know, the year after my sister graduated from high school,
I will.
I cleaned rooms at the Inn because she needed college tuition money. I was already married, and
What
we had
is
no
your
way,
deal?
had no way for her to go to college. Everybody pitched in. So there was a man who had Inn, his name was Sargent.
this.
His name is Archie Sargent. And we ran the office, we cleaned the rooms,
We're
we
not
did
called
everything we could do.
I heard
It's
traffic jam up there.
They have like
So
20,
the Kurt could go to college.
they have like
That's great.
16,
Hey, cowboy.
hi girl, yeah, 16 Land Rovers, and they have wheel walkers. They have guys,
Are you involved with the Land Rover tour too? So is Fiona, a friend of ours, Fiona Razor.
they have wheel walkers. They have guys with the international, or what is it, it's what did I just tell you, what was the name of the
International Land Rover
Land Rover, they have
clubs.
Land Rover shirts,
They're clubs.
and they have guys walking in front and back with walkie-talkies,
Yep.
and these old people.
Oh, telling them exactly
Driving
what, that's a wheel walker?
Who doesn't love it?
Yeah.
And Fiona was their tour guide. She had a radio too. She was in one of the back seats with all the wine. She said the radio cut out after 30 seconds and left with 3 frustrated.
Oh, so they're in our way. I mean, you gotta wait till we get there. They were very nice. They're very nice. But then the Jeep Jamboree Club's there. Jeep. And they don't let you run.
Whenever we're set.
I would have been, if it wouldn't have been for them, I'd have been early.
Yeah, right over there.
I had to get.
Gary and I were walking there 2-3 days ago and
I read it, and I read it all
tried to
online,
stick my
but.
head in your office to say hi that we were back. And you were out.
We're not in, we're not in.
You're out on the trip. Yeah. How's everybody's job going?
She loves it. And
So
she's not
she's
like
fully
that for
underway.
dad. She's not like that.
So,
She's huh?
She's doing it.
No?
Anybody else need to?
Dear.
Higher, please. Thank you.
Got one?
I was gonna print it and I didn't put it on there.
I just read it on.
I read it on the computer, but I got to
I do have,
make
we got
notes.
one
of
to
it. Showing our age.
Bring your mics down.
all right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, okay.
Sure.
My little grandbaby.
If it was cricket, it was yeehaw.
12:04, and we're going to call to order the Grand County Change in Form of Government Study Committee meeting. Again, the time is 12:04. It is Friday, October 25th, 2019. In attendance, we have Walt Dabney, Cricket Green, Bob Greenberg, Stephen Stocks, Marcy Till, Judy Carmichael, with Ruth Dillon as well. One member is currently missing, that is Jeremy Day, and on the phone we have Mr. Gavin Anderson, our attorney.
Yep, I can hear.
So,
No, Gavin.
First things first. Judy? Okay, Judy will lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Everyone, moving now to approval of the minutes. Everyone should have received October 18th, 2019 minutes. My one change that I have is on page 2. Under motion, the first motion, there's an extra G before goal on the third sentence in. So it's AG goal.
Sorry, what page 2?
Sorry, page 2. Under the paragraph motion, 3 lines down, his idea for AG goal.
There's a G standing alone, just all by itself. It's actually the 4th line down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I see it.
Oh, yes. That makes it easy.
Oh.
It's the 3rd line after the dark words,
Right.
the
It's a
bolded
typo.
words.
Any other changes that folks have seen?
I didn't even catch that
Move
one.
we approve with that change.
With that change, we've got a motion by Bob Greenberg to approve the minutes with that amendment, seconded by Cricket Green. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Passes unanimous, 6-0. Next, now moving on to general reports, there are none. Moving on to community outreach and possible action, there are none.
Can I say a word there?
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about our discussions about the possible need for some action by this committee closer to the time of the vote up or down on the plan. And again, consistent with my fear of life appointments here. The more I think about it, the more I think that there will be very active citizen groups probably promoting this. Mostly because everyone that we've spoken to in the whole period that we've been doing this has been horrified at the thought of going back to a 3-person county commission. So I think that that we may discover that our role is a lot less necessary at that point than right now we might think it is. I'm quite sure that both political parties will take strong stand and even spend some money promoting it. And I don't know who else will come out of the woodwork, but I just want to throw that out there because it's been on my mind.
Marcy?
I think that's probably
Can you guys speak up for Gavin?
I think that's probably a good, probably a pretty safe assumption. I think it will also be interesting to see how the candidates position themselves with regard to this being on the ballot as they're running, because I think it probably will have to be part of their conversation at some level.
Well, I think everyone's going to support it.
Right, so it will be in the public eye that way too, and then Doug did point out that he thought the newspapers would, it would be inclusive in their election coverage, so. But, that being said, we have $500 in the budget if we elect to do something.
Well,
That
that's
was a
the
request
question.
I made.
Do we have any idea of where we are on the Salt Lake County billings?
Mr. Anderson, could you speak to that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Do you know where we're at on the expenses that Grand County is paying your office for your assistance to date?
Yeah, we've not hit the 7,500 do not exceed. If Ruth hasn't got a invoice, it should be along shortly. I don't think there's any intent on Salt Lake County's part to pursue an amendment to the contract to go beyond $750 or $7,500. So I think that one, it was, fixed.
Perfect.
I haven't received an invoice recently. I have not.
Okay, I'll talk to our fiscal folks.
Any,
Did you get one, invoice, Ruth?
It does, yeah, it seems like I did.
Okay.
And did Bill Cooper ever
I think
invoice
there's
us?
one more along the way.
I haven't seen those. They don't always necessarily come to me, though, is the problem. So,
I'm just wondering if we really have $500 left.
no,
Well,
this
we
is
have
a request,
$500 for the next fiscal year,
Ah.
in 2020's budget.
which is a calendar
hope.
year. Yes, I requested that.
You never know.
any other questions or comments? Walt?
Yeah, I listening to Bob, and we probably don't need to maybe do something formal, but I personally, and I would hope the rest of us, I'd like to be available to any group that wants to have one of us or a couple of us come sit down with them and go through, how did you come up with this, or what are the discussions? I'm not ready to just walk away from it, and we know more about this as a group than anybody else does, probably. And so I think somehow we need to communicate that some of us, if they wanted us, would
I think a
Come.
speakers bureau is a great idea.
come talk to them.
Cricket?
I think that once we decide when it's completed, as far as we have it handed over and it's been approved, we probably should have an open house.
Yes.
And maybe that's where we're available after, like you're saying, I don't have a problem going to talk, but I still think we should have an open house, because the people who have participated and went to those open houses probably would like the opportunity to come and find out what we did with the information and what's been approved, so that they feel comfortable when the election time comes along, that they at least feel like they got to follow up to their participation. So I'd like to see that, and then some of the money could be like refreshments like we had before. I think that would be, a good way to spend it if we didn't have to do advertising. I don't really think that we need to do advertising, because I think that, like they said, they'll write articles about it. And maybe we reach out to other newspapers like Salt Lake Tribune and stuff. I mean, maybe they may care about what's happening and what's on our ballot, and then that's additional.
Walt?
I don't know whether that, between what I said and what Cricket said, maybe combined needs to be in a motion or not, but,
We could put it on as an agenda item for next week,
okay.
because right now it's not on as an action item.
Okay, and I think if we do that, if we had one big one at the Grand Center, that probably gets this part, and maybe one in Castle Valley, we would be, I think that's not unreasonable.
It is on as an action item.
On which one?
Community outreach and possible action.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So do we want to pick the dates? Do we want to hold off on picking dates?
Yes.
Because we don't know where we're at, but understand that that's something that we want to do. I'll put it on the, Walt?
I'd like to make a motion that we follow up at the proper time after we're completely finished with this project. Follow up with two open houses, one in Moab and one in Castle Valley, to answer citizen questions about this recommendation, and to provide the opportunity for individuals, one or more of us, to be available after the fact to meet with citizen groups to answer questions about this process.
I'll second that.
What we have is a motion before us to have a follow-up with two open houses with dates to be later determined, to allow members of the public to have the opportunity to give questions and feedback, and having two or more members of the study committee present at those dates. And that's been seconded. Cricket?
So this discussion is really a quick question. If we've gone through the whole process and it's been approved by the county attorney, can we all go to the open house? Because we've done our part. Because before, we've had to be very careful that we could only have
Well, it
three.
depends. It
We can only
depends
have
on the
three.
timing. I mean, we'd either have to do open.
No, we did 4. We just had to
You just do
had
open
to
meetings.
notice it.
Okay,
But
It-
it's a good question. I guess it'll depend on whether the study committee is still formal or has been dissolved.
okay.
Well,
Just a clarification, my motion wasn't suggesting that 2 of us were at the open house meetings.
no. I said 2
No,
or more.
no, yeah,
No, his,
two or more meetings.
But
Right.
two meetings.
Yeah.
I hope all of us go to
Right.
those meetings. What I followed up with that was that 1 or more of us would be available to future citizens groups after those 2 open houses to answer questions about what our recommendations were, what the process was, whatever they want to know.
and he specifically stated the open houses, one at the Grand Center and one at Castle Valley.
Because there possibly could be like the League of Women Voters and things like that.
The Republican Party,
Yeah.
the Democratic Party, whatever.
Well, I
we
mean,
wanted.
prior to the election, they could
Yes,
have part of League
absolutely.
of Women Voters to answer questions.
And are you? Let me ask this one clarification question. Are you having these open houses in mind immediately prior to the election, or is this after we're done? Because there's going to be either way whenever we submit this. There's the period in time between once we submit it to Christina Salon, when she comes back with it, when it gets on the ballot. Are you saying after it's been approved by Christina Salon?
Yes.
That then before the election itself that we have the open house?
That's correct.
Or are you saying after it's been approved by Christina, but before our statutory time as the study committee, before we dissolve?
I don't care.
I would say the second one,
I would say the second one too.
Okay.
As soon after it's been,
like as our final step
Yeah.
as a
Okay,
as a group.
officially.
but not necessarily. But at that time, we might not even be the study committee
Yeah, but it'd be immediately thereafter.
if we're talking about a year and a half.
But those of us that are willing to go
Sure,
to
no, I
groups
understand.
would-
So basically, what we're doing then is we're ensuring that we have the venues in a year in advance.
I think that this, I'm understood that we would do this immediately after she approved it.
Okay, so
Immediately.
it's not necessarily right
So
before.
we-
While it's fresh in everybody's
It
mind.
could be January or February.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's not November of
No,
whatever.
no,
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 Okay.
no, no,
Okay, that's
no.
Perhaps
Yeah.
I should reread the motion because I'm not sure I've got it.
sure. Let me, maybe Walt, do you want to restate it one more time?
I'll try. I move that the study committee, following the approval by the county attorney of a final proposal, would hold 2 open house public meetings, one in Moab, and I can say the Grand Center, but wherever is appropriate in Moab, and one in Castle Valley, for the purpose of explaining what our recommendations are and answering any questions about process or what the recommendations mean. And following that, those of us on this study committee that are available would be available to any group that wanted one or more of us to come and explain this recommendation and process to them,
With dates of those meetings to be determined.
with dates of those meetings to be determined in the future and publicized.
Upon an invitation? Upon invitation? Somebody invites you?
Oh, yeah. We won't invite ourselves.
No, upon receiving an invitation. I mean,
Maybe it should be 2
Sure, I get it.
I got it.
okay.
Any other discussion?
So that's still Bob seconds, right?
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move for a vote on that motion. Passes unanimously 6-0. Moving now, anything else on community outreach and possible action? Nothing. Moving to citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard. Bob.
This guy.
Here comes the citizen.
Not so much.
Hey, Jeremy.
Mr. Greenberg?
No, I was just waving.
Oh,
to
waving to anybody. Oh, okay. Perfect. No citizens out there?
A very big thing.
Perfect.
Well, a big thank you for always sticking it out with us.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Presentations, we have none. Moving now to the meat of today's meeting will be the general business action items discussion and consideration of item B, approving policy discussions and approving changes to proposed summary of recommended legislative action to be sent to the members of the state legislature regarding 2018 House Bill 224 as it relates to the state mandated change in Grand County form of government postponed from October 18th, 2019. Mr. Anderson, I'm just noting for everyone in the packet, item B, we have, it's 5 pages, before us. Last time, refreshing everybody's recollection, 1 week ago. Item B, yep, last week was item B. Giving us a little bit more time to process everything. So I will let Mr. Anderson or whoever wants to jump on board with any suggestions, changes, edits. Probably what would be easiest would be to kind of walk through it line by line as last time. I can lead us. Marcy could lead us, or Mr. Anderson could lead us. Maybe Marcy, right? Be easier. Marcy, take it away. Mr. Anderson, anything to add before we go? We're going to go line by line through item B.
Okay, so let me just suggest, and this was just my suggested recommendation, that we're really going to be talking about 2 documents. Number 1 is what you have in front of you, the Grand County experience. And then number 2 would be a cover letter. And I'm picturing that the cover letter would set out some of the issues that the study committee encountered along the way, including the litigation a year ago, the timing, the setback on the county attorney's opinion, just so there would be a kind of a memorialization of why Grand County is presenting this outline and how the issues arose that gave rise to this recommendation.
Perfect. So we'll go through item B and then we'll touch on cover letter topics.
Okay, and then just so we're all on the same page, I'm going to start draft or including a date up at the top. So we did the date of October 18th, which was our meeting last week, which we made a couple of suggestions to minor changes to the original draft. Those appear the ones you got in front of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marcy, if you'll
I
just...
like the title, Gavin, the Grand County Experience.
Yeah.
Is grand an adjective there, or?
I don't know.
I hope not.
Times for the state.
County Experience.
Or just the grand experience.
That would be the adjective, let's don't go there.
Roman numeral 1, the law needs to be simplified. The legal process is dense, complex, and convoluted. It is difficult to understand and hard to apply with confidence, and it needs to be dramatically simplified. A, the existing statutory process has so many twists.
I'm sorry, Marcy.
Yeah. Twists, exceptions, and variations that it is difficult for laypersons, a study committee, or attorneys to understand.
So any changes on anything so far? So I and A are probably approved. Going to B.
B, the Grand County Change in Form of Government Study Committee, hereafter known as the committee, recommends that the process be simplified by permitting only 2 tracks to initiate the process, 1 by citizen petition and 1 by commission resolution. Can I make a question of that sentence? Or do
Sure.
you want to hear the whole paragraph? I don't understand, is commission resolution the county commission?
Yes.
But we don't have a county commission.
Or council,
We should say
legislative body.
legislative body.
Majority of government petition is going to be cut to the county commission.
We can put
But
slash council.
Is
I
it,
guess just verbal shorthand, we can change that to
Slash council.
legislative body resolution.
I,
like,
The recommendation would maybe be put / council afterward,
yeah.
after the word commission.
oh, I like county legislative body.
I do
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
That would track with the existing statutory
Yep.
language, legislative body.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I recognize that most counties are commissions, but it is feasible in the future that a council could elect to initiate the process.
Sure.
The first filed gets precedence and is followed through to its conclusion before another process is considered or may be considered.
Question here. If it's a legislative body initiating process, is filed the right word?
The first thing that happens after it's prepared, whether it's prepared by the existing legislative body or by citizens, is it gets, quote, filed, unquote, with the county clerk's office. So
Okay.
that's kind of that reference.
Great, thanks.
Should we put filed with the county clerk's office, or?
No,
Okay,
just filed.
okay. The committee further recommends that either procedure, commission
Should be
resolution,
legislative body.
or legislative body resolution, or citizen petition, should require a study committee process to prepare an optional plan for the voters, and should no longer permit petitioners or an existing county legislative body, yes,
Yes.
to draft and recommend a new plan.
That's pretty bold. I have to take responsibility. That's my own fevered imagination. And I'll tell you the truth. I've been so impressed with the quality of the discussion that's been had in the Grand County Study Committee that I can't imagine a better process. Salt Lake, or not Salt Lake County, Utah County's gone through a process where they've had an informal advisory committee advising the county commission. And the county commission was in the process of doing a resolution based on this plan that had been developed by an ad hoc citizens group. And now it got derailed for other reasons we don't need to discuss. I just, and again, this is purely Gavin Anderson, I just see a lot of value in having the study committee process, and it also makes it vastly simpler to go that direction. That said, that's why I put this as further discussion for, it is going to be, of course, going to be the study committee's recommendation.
Mr. Greenberg?
I'm fine with that, Gavin, except I do have a question. Would this inadvertently prohibit a county legislative body from making changes to its form of government that falls short of the whole change process?
The biggest restriction, Bob, would be they wouldn't be able to change the distribution of executive branch, legislative branch powers.
Okay, so you think that's clear?
It'll still have to be a commission. Council managers still have to be a council manager. The things they could do without having gone through an optional plan would be all internal administrative structure.
Okay, as long as you think that's clear, I'm good.
The last sentence.
The section of the law addressing the unusual forms of government in Grand and Morgan counties have been resolved and may be repealed to simplify the statute. Yeah.
There's 3 or 4 sections that refer to them, not by name, Grand and Morgan.
Right.
And by the time the legislature sees this, those are all going to be, well, Grand will not have had the vote on the form of government yet, but it will be scheduled. Morgan County will have had the vote on its form of government by then. It'll just simplify things if we remove those particular references.
Okay, so we've got changes on item B. We're removing the word commission, changing it to legislative body throughout. That is the only change that we've made so far. With those changes, would everyone be happy with it? Okay, we've got approval. Going on to item C.
Item C. The confusion caused by the multiple tracks for beginning a change resulted in litigation in Grand County. This delayed the appointment of the committee for several months in late 2018 and early 2019, which made it difficult to meet the deadline for an election in 2019.
And that's an idea that may go in the cover letter as opposed to the
Right.
Cricket?
Well, I think, I mean, I know what's happening, of course, but it's confusing late. Maybe it should say early 2019 respectively. How do they say that? So that you're talking about one and then the other? Like there's 2 different things that happened because we didn't get formed until 2019. And Are you following me?
I see what you're saying.
When was the litigation filed?
Fall of 2018.
So you could just say
Year ago.
respectfully.
About a year ago
whatever.
this time.
And of course, the study committee's appointed in March. I assume that was fairly short after the court's decision.
Yes. That week.
Again, I think rereading this might be better in the cover letter rather than this document.
I would make a motion to put that in the cover letter. I don't.
I agree.
I think we're all in agreement there.
That's fine.
Okay.
So item C will move to a cover letter. So now all the letters will change, but we won't change them on this for D's.
Okay, so item D will become item C. The law's complexity is illustrated by a spaghetti bowl flow chart published by the legislative staff in 2018 interim committee meeting with that address. I would
boy.
suggest that we,
Include it.
well, I would suggest that we not label their chart spaghetti bowl flow, because even that's what we might think of it, but maybe by a
Complex.
confusing,
Complex and
I would
confusing.
say
complex and
the complex.
confusing
Here's the
flow chart.
The
Yeah.
complexity of the chart.
Well, it's confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Although we do call that interchange in Salt Lake the spaghetti bowl.
Right.
I mean, it does look like a spaghetti bowl.
It
respectfully.
does. I'm fine with spaghetti.
Yeah, I've looked
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah.
And I
I had a good check.
I
Fine, and again, this might be something that might
So we
be
should vote
better
on
in the cover letter as well.
I think it would
No.
be.
I'd leave it
No.
right where
Leave
it
it.
is.
It's
Yeah.
like
No.
the peas
You
guy.
could put
Instead of
Okay,
spaghetti
hang
bowl,
on,
we
hang on,
just
hang on.
put-
One at a
How
time.
about putting it in quotes? Spaghetti bowl in quotes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Spaghetti to go bowl to quotes. Do we like that?
yes.
Okay, put it in quotes. Do we want this in the packet
In the
or in
packet.
this item, or do we
Yes.
want it as cover letter?
I think
Anyone
it's-
like cover letter? One at a time. Walt?
Well, I would just, what we want them to do is if they're going to do a flow chart, do one that is not confusing and complex. The flow chart's okay, but this one is not useful.
So I think you could even add the word is illustrated by a confusing quote-unquote spaghetti bowl flow
There
chart
you go, there you go.
published by the legislature
That's fine.
staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So add confusing and then
And keep it
leave
there?
spaghetti.
Yeah.
Well, and that actually kind of describes why you're calling it a spaghetti
Yeah.
bowl.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's confusing.
Okay, so it'll stay there. So item C will just add the word confusing before the word spaghetti bowl. Spaghetti bowl will be in quotations. Those are the two only changes
Item D, you mean?
of
Well, it's the
item
new
C.
item C.
C.
Oh, that's right.
And then I guess we're just missing a period at the end of the sentence as well.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so page 2, item E now becomes item D. The rules for selecting the members of the appointment council, the body that appoints the study committee, are also unnecessarily complex and introduce more variations based on how the process begins. Is it variations or variables? Variations?
Variations.
Okay. This problem was one of the issues in Grand County litigation and can be solved by making a single uniform process apply in all situations, or for all situations.
In all situations.
In all
That's-
situations. And then we have the applicable status, which I'm assuming is verbatim, statute, is verbatim from the law.
This is not a verbatim precise recitation of the statute. This is just so as we go through this, we can find the statute.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, applicable statutes 17-52A-301 already addresses the simplified two-track process, but that simple procedure is complicated by sections 302 and 303, which introduce separate rules for larger counties. Section 501 regarding counties where less than 60% of the voters approved appointing a study committee. Section 103, which addresses the issues in Grand and Morgan, which are now resolved. And Section 501 3 regarding the election deadlines for larger counties or 60% vote counties. Whew.
It is a mess, and there, to me, there doesn't seem to be any good reason why you couldn't use exactly the same process
Right.
as the appointment council. That's the one that involves somebody appointed by the existing governing body, somebody appointed by the county's legislative delegation. Anyway, that just seems to be a no-brainer.
Any changes on these two paragraphs, Walt?
The only thing I would ask about, since Jeremy and I were the appointment committee, is that we need to be pretty specific with this appointment. recommendation, because what happened in the kind of interesting ruling by the judge is that Grand County got upheld as the lead in this thing, but they threw out one of the appointment members that had come from, I guess, the petitioning group, as I read.
There was no, so
So
basically
there was
there's no petitioning, so what happened, Walt, is there was no petitioning group.
my point.
They threw the petitioning group out
My
completely,
point is that
both sides.
unless we make it very clear, what ended up is there were two of us, so you don't have a majority opinion, you have to have a unanimous opinion for any selection. So, Gavin, we need to make that recommendation very clear in a process that gives us an appointment committee that,
That's,
Well, one thing that you can clarify, and I saw some frowny face, some concern or confused looks. What happened if you and Jeremy? I know the answer, but what happened if you and Jeremy didn't agree, for example, on the appointment committee?
well, went in 45 minutes, it was back from the legislative.
So the legislator had the opportunity to pick somebody instead of you two.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just filling everybody in. So that.
So whatever the final deal is, we need to make it pretty clear that there needs to be at least 3 members picking, so that it's not just 2. Because Jeremy and I did pretty well. We did it all but 2.
Well, I was thinking complete agreement's not a bad thing.
Well, what happens if it doesn't have agreement, goes to state legislature? Which
then they pick.
That
I don't
fallback
know if
ruling.
people like that or not.
I don't, the way it's initiated is that's kind of.
I know. I'm just pointing out for
Yeah,
everybody. Not
the theory behind that, and what the judge's point, I think, is, we're going to treat this as if the county initiated this process, and by doing that, the county gets 1 pick, and the legislatures get 1 pick, and then you have to choose unanimously, or it gets kicked back up to the legislators, and then they will choose that final appointment position.
so either the county agrees with whatever the legislative branch wants, otherwise the legislative branch
And-
gets to pick.
And the reasoning behind that
Which sounds
in most bills is because all counties are in extension a working body in and behalf of
sure.
the state legislative governing bodies.
And I understand that, but that's the similar situation that we find Mr. Anderson in with Ms. Sloan.
True. That's sure.
A bit different, but the same
Little bit
idea that if one doesn't agree, then it goes back. But I understand, that's what I'm.
Well,
Sure.
and I think,
But I don't know that we can change that.
I don't either, and I think
That's just part of the law.
we should exercise deference to elected officials. I mean, I think that's the appropriate way to deal with a tie.
To the state elected officials?
All elected officials is my view, but yes, including
No,
the
my
legislature,
concern was
crazy as they drive
we were
us,
losing local control over the process.
That's right.
that way.
And I'm pointing out, yeah,
And I thought it was very valuable that we didn't do that, and, but that's just my opinion. It just needs to be clear.
Do you have some specific language you wanted to try and work in here?
I'd have to go back and look at exactly what it does say. I think right now it just says that, well, what would it have been if there had been 3?
If there would have been so if it would have been initiated by a petitioner, it would have went like this. You would have had the legislative, our local county would have been able to pick someone, the state legislatures would have been able to pick someone, then the
And the
petitioners
petitioner
would have
picks the
picked
third.
someone. And then you would have had 3, and then a majority rule would have done that. Whereas, once again, we're an oddity, like us in Morgan County, we were the exception to what would most of the time work pretty well. And I personally can see if a county legislative body decides that they want to change their form of government, I can see why they wouldn't get 2 picks. I can see that.
Why they would or
Why they
wouldn't?
would not.
Because then they'd have too much.
They
So-
have too much power
so,
over determining what that study committee is going to look like, and they could gerrymander it in their
If the
favor.
legislative body initiates it,
Yeah, if
then there's just 2.
then there's just 2.
but if it's by
And those
petition-
two pick the third.
Yeah, right, unanimously. And if they can't, then it goes back up to the legislature. It removes the local government from having too much power and control and creates almost a check and balance. It puts that power and control back in with your state legislatures.
Right.
But the idea there is that nobody locally wants them to
Then
do it.
Gavin, I do have a way to clarify that, because, Jeremy, if I'm hearing you right, if the legislative body initiates the process, then the legislative body picks one member, and the legislators pick the state legislators for that area, pick the second. Those two pick the third.
Right.
What we didn't do is bring the third in to then pick the other two. I would buy this if the two of us had picked the third member, and then the three of us meet
Right.
to pick the other two. Then you've got three people.
So for clarification, Bob, I can answer where your question's at. There is technically in the bill an appointment council, which me and Walt served as. So what Walt is saying is that third person should then become a part of the appointment council, and then they would unanimously pick the rest.
They would
Majority pick the rest. Huh?
See, then it's clean.
Yeah, then it's a lot cleaner.
Isn't that what we're talking about?
No,
No, that's
it
not how
is
the bill
not
works.
what we were talking
At
about,
all.
because Jeremy and I
That's not how the law reads.
picked four.
Yeah,
We picked four. We got to the fifth one, and took it to the legislators for the fifth pick.
Well, the appointment
Because you couldn't agree.
The appointment council members are not necessarily study committee members.
But that's got nothing to do with what we're talking
before
about
it
now.
even begins.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
So you're suggesting that the appointment council should be 3 people,
It isn't important who we picked
right?
third, but as soon as we agreed on the third, we should have suspended,
and then had
had a
them
meeting
become
with
part
the
of
three of us there,
Right.
and
So
pick the other two.
One other piece that's missing. Once you guys appointed somebody, they didn't enter into your guys'
None.
negotiation whatsoever. So it's just them the entire time.
That's right.
So they picked number 1, they picked number 2, they picked number 3, and then you got to number 4, and it just didn't work.
Or five.
Five, or whatever.
This would be a lot cleaner deal. Jeremy,
But that
do you
was a
just,
that's a procedure you two decided on.
no,
No,
it
that's
is
not
not.
spelled out within the law.
But couldn't you have adjourned and seated the third
There was
person?
no
Uh-uh.
precedence for it within the law,
Well, there's
and
no
that's what Walt.
precedence at all.
Right, but
Hey,
At
no
this point-
interpretation. We
right,
want
there-
it black
we-
and white
We tried
in
to
the
do it as
damn
black
law.
and white as possible. Me and
Yeah.
Walt did. We didn't want there to be any interpretation or anybody saying that so we just went black and white on it. What Walt is saying is that if a legislative body, and it comes down to 2, that third person they pick should be then part of the appointment council,
That's fine.
and, yeah.
I
And
thought
pick the
that's
other
how you
two.
did it.
No,
Yeah.
it was, yeah, it's, there's no precedence, that's why we're talking about it today, because once again, it's how
Okay.
HB 224 is written.
I understand that.
So it's,
Do you disagree with me?
no, I agree with you. I
Okay.
think that's great. I just was trying
Gavin,
to
do you
get everybody
understand
on
what
the
we're saying there?
same convoluted page.
Why,
But for the record, Marcy ended up being our number 5.
No, and I'm not talking
7.
personalities at all.
No, yeah.
We got a great
Well,
group.
they
I
were-
love
okay,
this
They
group.
were
All right,
curious. They
so,
asked who was
question.
first, and I said, Judy.
Yeah.
Well,
And then-
you want to add language to this?
I would like to add language that Gavin, did you listen to that?
Yeah, I
So
don't have much background in that part of.
here's the recap. What he wants, Gavin, is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that when they're selecting the members to be a part of the appointment committee, that once they have 2 individuals, those 2 individuals agree to have a third. The third is involved in the negotiations to pick or to vote on the appointment. The appointment committee.
Council, appointment council.
Appointment council.
Yes.
To
No,
a-
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's an appointment council to select the
To
study
select the
committee.
It's an appointment council to select the
The
study committee.
Yes.
Yeah, appointing to that committee.
Pointing, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what you're missing.
it's so me and Walt had to choose 3 other people to be on the appointment council. and then those people on that, oh, and you're right, it was, so, and then that appointment council would then pick the study committee.
Yeah.
So the way when you look at legislative body, the process goes, it goes down to 2. If there's a petitioner involved, you got 3. So you have an ability to have,
Right.
there's no tie. But with the legislative process that the judge put it under, it made it so there's the ability to have a tie, and then if there is a tie, it gets kicked back up to the legislative body.
But let me see if we can put some order to this. Number one, how many people do you think ought to be on the appointment council?
5.
5 is fine.
5 is plenty.
Okay, and then I think it's a given that the county's legislative delegation picks at least one of those persons.
Yep.
And it's a given that the county legislative body would pick one of those persons.
No, the state
The state-
legislators.
The county would pick, the state would pick, and if
That's
there's,
two people.
and if there's no petitioner on that third person, if it can't be decided, it goes back to the state legislatures, and then once the third person is appointed to the council to choose the appointment council, that person's vote then is part of the appointment council process. Does that make sense?
So we end up with 3 people appointed by the appointment council, and then those 3 people pick 2 more. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 3 people are, one is picked by the legislative delegation,
One is picked by the county,
one by the, let's say, the county commission,
county legislative body, whatever it is, yep.
Yeah, and a third is picked by the petitioners, but if there's no petitioners, how's that third
It's
person?
picked by the other 2.
It's either picked by the other 2 unanimously. If they cannot decide, it goes to the state legislators to decide, and then, but the problem then is that appointment council is only, in the way it's set up, that appointment council, nobody has a vote for who's on the appointment council in the current way it's set up unless there's those 2. So theoretically, me and Walt could have disagreed on every one person, and it could have been kicked back up to the state legislature. What Walt is trying to avoid is that once the state legislature picks that third person for the appointment council, they then become a viable vote to choose the remaining 2. So instead of having it to where it constantly is getting kicked back up to the state legislature.
Okay, so, whatever happens, the final 2 are always picked by the first 3.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So we have, person number 1 is picked by the legislative delegation, person number 2 is picked by the county governing body, person number 3 is picked either by the first 2 members, but it has to be unanimous, or is picked by the petitioners if there's a petition. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and 4 and 5 are picked by not unanimous majority vote of the first 3.
Correct.
Okay.
That's as good as.
That would have cleared up so much.
You made sense out of that,
Yeah.
Kevin.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, you did, I hope.
Okay,
Ugh.
are we doing okay? We've got,
Yeah.
That
So-
sounds good to me, I think I understand it.
Okay.
Obviously, we'll need to do a draft and just have you, decide what you think.
and I think the people that have the most
So
knowledge
this is
or
gonna
input
be
about that is
rewritten.
Walt and Jeremy.
Fortunately.
And I don't have a stake either way. I don't really, I mean, we can
It would
look
just
at it and if
make it
people.
cleaner. I think that's what Walt's trying to get. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just trying to make it cleaner, a cleaner process, a more.
So in this document that we're
Transparent,
reading,
cleaner.
is that go under,
Item D is where it's,
it goes under item D
the new
still?
D.
I think it'd be valuable to spell that out like we just discussed in item D.
Okay.
Is
Alright.
anyone, and being fair, anyone against having that language in there? Okay, everyone's happy. Walt and Jeremy, I would encourage you guys to be in contact with Mr. Anderson because you guys seem to know the most about it, and Walt, you're the most passionate about it.
Gavin, if you have any questions, just send me a note.
So-
I can work on a draft. It's just gonna be a sentence, it's obviously gonna be a little more complex in the,
I can't even imagine.
in the proposed bill.
So
I'll
those,
run by all of you, and then, Walt, Jeremy, if you've got some suggestions to refine it,
Sure.
again, in this informal format.
The only thing this cleans up really is the premise in a lawsuit.
Sure.
From my perspective, because the judge ruled that it would be the two.
Right.
And so if that's already clarified in the law, then there's not
okay,
the
so
same
we're
issue.
just going to add specifics regarding our suggestions for.
Right.
Okay, great.
Any other changes on item D? If not, we're complete with item Roman numeral I. Okay.
Okay, Roman numeral 2, I just realized I didn't put further discussion under this one. I think maybe this is just kind of a given. We
The only-
obviously need to resolve this issue, inconsistency in the statute, or at least an apparent inconsistency, with the date that the optional plan needs to be, the draft needs to be prepared.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yeah, I think it's fine, except I think you should throw in the 45 days that the county attorney has, which actually backs it way up to a half a year, 165 days. I just think you ought to throw that in, because that makes it even
More
a stronger
compelling.
point.
Sure. And how about we have Marcy just read through the whole thing, and then we'll go from there.
In the current statute, the date for the completion of the optional plan in relation to the deadline before Election Day has internal inconsistencies and leaves a county uncertain about when the committee must complete its work and provide a finished proposal.
About a finished optional plan of government.
And I would say, as we draft this, what we mean by finished proposal is a proposal that has been reviewed and approved by the county attorney.
Oh, okay, so,
So we're clear that the county attorney's 45-day approval process fits in that final
So
deadline.
we want to change the language to about when the committee must complete its work and provide a finished optional plan as
Approved by the county attorney.
Yeah.
approved by the county attorney, or an optional plan approved by the county attorney.
Yeah.
I like reviewed better, but,
But it's got to be approved.
yeah.
Because if it's not
Yeah.
approved, then it gets kicked back, so then
Okay.
that's going to stagger it out more.
Also, in the second line after Election Day, comma, there's an extra. It looks like there's an extra space between
Yep.
the comma and has, and an extra space in between internal and inconsistencies.
Yep.
Okay. Shall I read the applicable
Yes.
statutes? Under 17-52A-501 through 5013, the study committee can finish the optional plan and submit it to the council and clerk 60 days before Election Day. Section 403.5 provides that the optional plan must be published on the county website at least 45 days before Election Day.
Would
Stephen?
this be a good point to put the 45 days for the county attorney?
It has to go in ahead of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the easiest way to make this as simple as possible is, it's almost like defining the quote, proposed optional plan, unquote, as being one that has already been reviewed and approved by the county attorney.
Right. If we have that on the previous language, then we've already addressed that. Okay. Okay. So never mind. Scratch that.
So that I can make reference to that.
No. If we put in the sentence before optional plan as approved by county attorney, then that's fine. Okay. The uncertainty.
The uncertainty comes in 403.5 BII, which provides the study committee may not make changes to the proposed plan later than 120 days before Election Day. This becomes a problem if the county attorney review requires changes in the plan.
I recall in Grant's situation, that was the date, I think it was July 8th. And then we didn't get our proposed draft done until the first week in August, second week in August. And so those two dates need to be consistent. The 120 days and the date the optional plan approved by the county attorney is done.
May I just say something? My understanding of that July 8th date was that everything had to be perfect. No, wait a minute. It had to be submitted.
Any amendments after that date?
Okay, yeah, so they could still submit it after that date, which they did. And it still could have made it to the election, even within that time
If
period,
the
had
review
it been
had
perfect.
shown no problems.
Yeah, okay. I got a quick other, it's got the word council in there. Do we want to return that to legislative body?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Where is that?
First sentence under applicable statutes.
Okay,
To the council.
I got it. Okay,
Great.
Any other changes on that section?
was Chris gonna weigh in on this election business, or?
He,
Yes, but he's too busy
I had a
with elections.
conversation with Chris, just, latest one just this morning. Remember last time we met, last week, we talked about Roman numeral 3, and, I had included in there, the previous draft, a sentence saying, we need to wait for Chris. And I think the feeling of the study committee a week ago was, let's wait on Chris and let him provide that when he's, done with the budget. And instead, they included this, current, Roman numeral 3, which is about being more flexible on electing the new officials.
Okay.
So, we do need to acknowledge Chris's concerns about consistency with the election code, which is the question of when we're gonna be able to break Chris loose so he can, help us on that.
but my question again was, I don't know if we want to loop him into the study committees. He's not piggybacking on our letter. He could theoretically write his own review and letter. I don't know how much we want to wait on him for that idea. Not to be
Can we
rude,
just
but
include a sentence in our cover letter that there are
yeah, sure,
concerns?
county-
And that, you know,
That's
our
fine.
county,
That'd be good in the cover letter.
sure.
Yeah.
In the cover letter that he has concerns that he will be providing a supplemental letter, report, whatever he wants to do. Because that way we keep it, just like Mr. Anderson, we're not using you as an individual. We're just saying this is what the study committee period says, not anybody
Right.
else. If they want to.
Agreed. I have some, well, you gonna read it now? Because I've got some
No,
changes I want to see.
On number, yeah, go ahead, throw in the changes, Bob.
Well, I think we ought to add in the first paragraph at the end, comma, or as a special election. Which would,
Are we on 3?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
sorry,
wanna
okay,
read
so number
three?
3, yep. You want me to read it?
sure.
I like
Okay.
that.
The current law requires a delay of 2 years between a vote in favor of changing to a new optional form and the vote to elect officers for the new form. This can be reduced by permitting a vote for new officers to be held on a municipal election day. Changes
Or
there.
as a special election.
Okay. Or as a special election.
That just provides maximum flexibility to the counties.
Okay. Any other changes?
Yeah, keep reading.
Okay. Applicable statutes. Under 17-52A-5031A, the election of new officials is held on the next general election day, 2 years after the vote to adopt a new optional plan. If the vote for officials were permitted on a municipal election day, it would reduce the delay from 2 years to 1 year.
So I would change that to say, we're permitted on a municipal or special election day. It could reduce the delay. Because permitted is not required. So it could reduce, not would reduce.
Okay,
So everybody catch that?
yep.
Okay. Any other changes on item number 3? Perfect. Moving to number 4. Who forms council districts and boundaries?
The big one.
Let me just introduce there.
Okay.
If I can take a second. I'm seeing the cover letter is presenting 2 major issues with HB 224. Issue number 1 is the complexity of the process. Issue number 2 is the failure of the statute to clarify exactly what role the existing governing body has in working with the study committee to prepare a draft optional plan. And that, of course, was the big one that came out in the county attorney's review. And so I
I like it.
Number 4, the statutory process permits the committee to include district council seats in the optional plan.
Should be district legislative body seats.
The statute further vests in the committee the authority to include in the plan, quote, all necessary implementing provisions, end quote, and other, quote, provisions necessary or advisable, end quote, for the plan to be effective. See section 17-52A-403 and 402 or 404, 2 through 3. In Grand County, the committee relied on this authority to include two, and, well, no, in ours, we will say council, 2 council districts within their boundaries set out in the plan. The Grand County Attorney Review found that the committee had no legal authority in statute or to set out the districts or include their boundaries as part of the plan. Rather, only the existing county council, that should be county council, could do that. Period.
I think we ought to add the language, the current county attorney review found that the committee and the voters had no legal authority, because that was...
I'm not hearing that, Bob, I'm sorry.
I think we should add that the county attorney review found that the committee and the voters had no legal authority, because that was the alternative argument.
Right.
So like,
Okay.
what you mean by voters is once it's approved, then they've selected it because
Right,
they approved
exactly.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that was her objection also. She said neither the committee nor the voters
Has
Okay.
the
can do that,
authority.
only the legislative body,
Okay.
Any other additions or
unless
changes?
it's explicitly delegated.
Right.
Well, the big question for the study committee is that, Alex, do you want to make a recommendation in this document, the one you have in front of you, that it be either the study committee or the county legislative body?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to recommend to the legislature that they delegate that power.
I would,
Well-
but I mean, I get it.
I'm okay to
Well,
do
we
it.
happen
but-
to
I'm
take
of
that, we happen to take that responsibility very seriously and
We're
spend a
very
lot of
serious
time, but
people.
there's no guarantee
I-
that every study committee is going to do the same
We-
thing.
Every legislature I've talked to felt, I mean, these are guys, a lot of them are attorneys, but a lot of them aren't. And the ones that I've talked to all feel like, well, we thought you guys had that ability. So it needs to be clarified as to
does.
what the intent of the legislature needs to make their intent clear in the bill, period. And I think that's what we need to hit on. I as much
In our
as
cover letter,
how
too.
I feel about it is, I mean, hey, make your intent clear, what it was.
Cricket?
Well, I think that it's important that if the study committee feels the need to create the districts, which is kind of what we felt like, to be able to know what our community needed, there was a purpose for it, that should be available. And it should be part of, and maybe some study committees won't want to do that. They'll say, hey, let the legislative body figure that out. But we felt like that was a part of why we could all agree on what we agreed on, is because we could choose the district. I don't believe that everybody would want to do that, but we should still give them availability, or at least put it in there.
So my suggestion would be maybe something like, if the state legislator intended to grant that authority or option to the study committee, that be made clear.
That's
Perfect.
exactly right.
Perfect.
Not telling them one way or the other, just simply saying, and you could put in parentheticals, in Grand County's study committee, they decided to do or to have districts, period.
But
You don't
I
have
think
to,
we could also include that in the cover letter, that we went through a very thoughtful,
Sure.
educated, elaborate process.
And paid somebody to come to help us.
To
That's
right. Throw away money.
consider districts, and
We've-
that was completely negated.
And it was a cost, I mean,
I just didn't
we
want
didn't
to,
take it lightly.
I just didn't want to come out and say, we should get this period, but just, if your intent is this, make it clear that the study committee has the option, not that
Has the authority,
has the authority to
Which
have
they-
districts or not.
which they might or might not exercise.
Might not.
For your information, Morgan County is going to a 5-member county commission by district that they have in their optional plan specifically said the existing county council
Ah,
Well,
well, in ours, there's nothing in the law that says that the existing county council would do that, and what it does say is we can choose districts if we want. We can recommend that, and then we're gonna go to vote to pick whether we're gonna do that or not, and then we're gonna vote on folks. It doesn't say, you cannot have people running for districts that the districts are not described.
That was
But
always
You got
Chris's.
2 years, you got 2 years there.
Yeah, but there's
That was-
nothing that
Right.
compels anybody to do anything.
Right.
So
That was
it needs to
Chris's
be-
argument.
Yeah,
I
it needs to
got
be
it.
clear.
Yeah, it
And
needs.
I agree with Cricket. I think we should have had the opportunity, and I'm reinforced by how we did it, that we did a good job on.
it
Well-
might be best highlighted to have this in the cover letter instead of kind of a footnote at the end of this. I would suggest we put it in the cover letter unless people have other thoughts. Judy?
One of the things that it did succeed in doing is making it positively apparent to the public that what we were doing was not gerrymandering.
Yes.
And I think that was important. Had we set it up any other way than the way we did it, with Cooper's expertise and the fact that there was some cost involved in it, said to the public, this was done for the good of Grand County, not for any other reason.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Marcy? And
Well,
then Cricket.
and I think that the confusion between HB 224 and actual election procedures at the county level needs to come to light. I don't
Needs to be
think-
resolved.
Yeah, it needs to be resolved because it's problematic.
Yeah, yeah.
For
We all
sure.
agree on that.
Which is, Marcy, say that again?
So
Well, that's the whole point.
Well, so the idea that, let's say, so Morgan County sets 5 districts. If their legislative body elects to do nothing,
Well, we
how does
address
their
that.
county clerk
That's
enact
exactly right.
their
That's my
form of
point.
government?
But we do address that later on.
Sure.
This-
Yeah, there is a statutory issue exactly with that.
You bet.
If you do say the county, existing county legislative body gets to do this, you've got to put some fences around that, explain what they have to do, when, use mandatory language, one person, one vote, that kind of stuff.
But can they delegate that, or can they force the county to do that? Is that the study committee's place to? I'm sorry, that's more theoretical than, I mean.
Depends on
It
who
would be
we
the,
fall under.
okay, so number one, the question is, let's say the legislature gives the power either or, expressly allows the study committee to do it, or expressly allows the county governing body to do it. Then the legislature would have to say, if the county legislative body does it, this is the process you, county legislative body, need to follow. So it'd be the legislature saying that, not the study committee.
Right. And we discussed this in the hopes of getting done quicker. We discussed this later, so we could probably come back to this as well. Anybody else have any directed comments on this? My vote would be to highlight districts as something that is in the cover letter that we stated out there, but maybe just add on a sentence to make it clear the intent of the state legislature.
I like that sentence you added on. I think we all did.
Okay.
And just to clarify too, as I mentioned, I'm picturing the cover letter as having these two
Well,
major issues with
right.
HB 224. Number one, complexity. Number two, what's the role of the existing county government?
Right.
So
I think you need to say including the authority to set districts in the
Right.
plan.
yeah,
Right.
now there's a couple of places it comes in.
Right.
But that's the question is, do you want to make that recommendation to your cover letter and say, we don't think the existing county government ought to have any say in the study committee?
I'm more of the position that it should be, their intent should be clear and express our position that we,
agree.
Their intention being the legislature,
Right, that the
not
legislature-
the
We got
county.
caught in the crossfire.
sure,
Yeah,
that
and
should
I'm-
be clear and that we recommended form whatever. And just, and then I think that speaks loud enough. We don't have to put their noses in it.
Agreed.
Mr. Chair,
That's the purpose of legislation, is to avoid these arguments. You should avoid it the living
Exactly.
a year ago, it should have
Ru-
avoided the issue with
Right, Ruth,
That's the purpose.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Ruth.
I just want to say something. to your comment, Marcy, about the districts having been, all the work and the process and everything being completely negated, just to say that it is still something to bring to county council, if that's,
Yeah.
we need to figure that part out. And my role is to get those things on the agenda for the county council. So I just want to say it's not completely negated. A lot of work's been done.
That was extreme.
It's just the next process, I'm waiting on you guys. So,
Any other changes on item 4?
okay.
Okay, moving to item 5. Limit the role of the existing government in preparing the plan. The committee might propose an amendment that expressly eliminates or expressly permits any involvement or influence by the existing government in the process. And I'm to preserve individual elected officials' expressions or of opinions and suggestions. Bob.
That just means the county council, because the existing county council can come into the study committee and say, I believe.
As a citizen, yep. Mr.
Yeah,
Greenberg?
I always thought it should be.
I don't support keeping this in the letter at all, mostly because I'm not sure how, in the real world, what we're talking about.
Right.
I think this committee would certainly, if the chair of the county council came in and said, hey, county council has decided we want you to do X, this committee would have said, thanks for your opinion.
Bye-bye.
Well, it did come up twice, and actually three times. Number one is we set the boundaries. Number two, Christina also relied on that to say the council sets the election date. So the study committee can't include the election date in the optional plan. And number three is the bear in the room. The county attorney gets the review as to whether or not the plan, that we'll talk about later. But in terms of real world, there are those three.
And I think we should address those three real-world issues, not a blanket statement, which doesn't really make much sense.
And Gavin,
Jeremy?
I thought the bill was pretty clear that once this process is initiated, that
The study committee has
Yeah.
the reins.
that has the reins. So, and I mean, me and Bob are we're agreeing here in a way that
Scary.
I feel like and I get what you're saying at the same time, but I do agree that maybe a more specific, the more specific we are, the more I think the more they will react to it.
Cricket?
Well, I think that if being able, the things that we were shot down on, if that's covered, then this is taken care of.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it already says in the beginning they can't have any involvement, and if we're able to
Call out
set
the
the
issues.
date and pick districts, if we choose to, then that takes them out of it anyway. So then,
Yeah,
I'm just concerned, I was caught completely flat-footed by Christina's thought that the study committee couldn't do boundaries. I was so astounded, I didn't even know how to respond intelligently to her. I'm just concerned that there's going to be something else come up later, some other county, it's not Grand County,
Interesting.
and say, well, the statute also doesn't say this.
So,
And there's one other issue real quick. Walt had brought up a couple of times before his travels, is that he'd like to see some kind of a statement of what the status of the study committee is.
But that's dealt with specifically.
And so that's kind of tied in with that idea as well.
That's specifically tackled later on. I'm just trying to imagine what a legislative action would be that would forbid involvement by a duly elected body. I don't know what that means, and I think we're much better off being specific.
I get where Gavin's coming from. I mean, here we are. We're at the end of the day, I get what the legislative body wanted to do to try to keep the current
Influence.
administrations out of it and from influencing it. But at the same time, I also get where Gavin's talking about. But I think the more specific we are, the more traction we gain with the legislature. If we want to include in our cover letter something about, there were these confusions here, which we will address specifically, but opens up possibility for more confusion down the road. I think that is probably a better, and then having it in with our bullet points. But I definitely get it. Like, you were talking about potentially, people dissolving districts, if that was something, or, you know, going to all districts for some counties might be, and people who have ran and have positions in government, and whether you look at it or not, they're being paid to be there, and when you start to mess with somebody's potential income, it does create an imbalanced position that if I'm elected now, but my position could be gone, I may want to influence that so my position is not gone. I get why they're doing that, but I think we can be more specific and maybe in our cover letter put that generalization that you see, Gavin, in future problems.
Walt, myself, then Marcy. Then
One
Bob.
approach might be, in my opinion, as this HB 224 has gone through this process, is to have a section that just says the role of the existing legislative body in this process, and be very specific as to what their responsibility is. It's budget for this, it's a couple of other things, and if it's not listed there, then they have no role. And that way it would seem to be very specific, because we got a memo that said we need to get this to the county council for approval.
Right.
Well, that's a legal opinion from a county attorney.
No,
So
it wasn't a legal opinion.
That was a recommendation
Yes.
to us based on the law, so the law clearly is not very clear if the county attorney is thinking that the county existing legislative body has a review responsibility.
Well, we
So
should
we
change
need to
that, don't
clarify what their responsibilities are, and if they're not listed,
That's
if it
a good
ain't
idea.
wrote, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I
It's an
think
old
we need to
Texan
do
saying.
that.
And one of my thoughts, and Mr. Anderson, my thoughts would be maybe in the definitions section, a clear definition of what the study committee is. The study committee
Yes.
is an independent body that is not a mere advisory committee that
Right.
has its own ability and authority to do X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
I think maybe that would be a clearer way to put it in the definition section, what it is. That way, I think we are all, everybody on here, everybody on this group right now are strong-willed individuals. They're not afraid of any county government, but you could have somewhere in a different area that they have a study committee, and the county, whatever county it is, will bully their way in.
Right.
And if they don't know, that they can just say, we don't want oversight. I understand maybe this goes a little bit too far in telling them to shoo off, but I think the study committee knowing what their limitations are is important in this process. And so I would recommend maybe telling them, hey, define the roles, define the relationship.
Right.
Then
And-
Marcy, then Bob, then
Well,
Walt.
and that comes back again to what was the intent in HB 224 in terms of the study committee's role. And we have two interpretations of that, and so that needs clarification. And then as far as section 5, I think that we can mention that in the cover letter, and we can bullet point, these were the issues. And then I also think within the body of this document, in each section where it is an issue, we make sure that we have mentioned that, so who forms council districts and boundary, that we mention specifically, this has the role of the existing government versus the study committee has been an issue with this, has been a concern with this
A
issue.
point of confusion.
Point of confusion.
Bob, then Walt.
Yeah, I like your approach, Steve, just because you're always better off stating the affirmative. What are the powers of the study committee rather than limiting the powers of the county legislative body? And plus, Gavin, I understand you have a broader interest than we do in these matters. This document is our experience. You know, if someone gets in trouble down the line, they'll sort it out. But this is a report of our experience of what was problematical.
It's not, it's a theory I have, I've had it for 40 years, so I think it's a pretty good theory. That, the statute exists to avoid argument. It's to avoid litigation,
Yes.
to avoid problems in the future, and that's just where I'm coming from, Bob.
I understand that, but this is our report of what we think need to be changed based on our experience. not our prediction of who's going to get in trouble in 5 years.
Walt?
I still think, and Bob, I would suggest that this is positive as well. You positively tell the existing legislative body what it is that they do in this process. And I'll refer you guys to 3 of those county council people showing up here to put their input in, or to review or whatever, because they thought that was what they were supposed to do. There's nothing now that really articulates. They thought they were going to get this to approve based on whatever reason. I just think it needs to be clear. This is the role of the existing legislative body in this process. And to the extent it's not, if the legislative body initiates the process, they may be even, or a county petitioner initiates the process, it may be the existing legislative body's interest to try to insert themselves any way they can in this thing. So once the process is started, it needs to be clear that people can say, wait a second, here is the role of the existing legislative body in this process.
So
And we're not going to go through it again probably anytime soon. I hope hell no, I'm not. But for other people, this is going to continue to be a point of contention.
So here's my thought, and well, I think this might fix everything. Instead of calling this limit the role of existing government in preparing a plan, instead call it defining the roles
Exactly
of the
what I'm
parties.
trying to say.
We would define the study committee as an independent body that is not a mere advisory committee to determine the change in form of government. Second, the legislative body shall provide support through budgeting, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe some language that any other communication between the parties shall be at the discretion of the study committee.
Well, that's 10B.
Right.
Mr. Chair, may I just say something?
Yes.
I just want to, for the record, just clarify, the time that the 3 council members were here, or 2, whatever it was, that was, you might recall, at my request, because I was following the county attorney's timeline that had been provided to you all in a spreadsheet early on, saying that council would have to adopt the plan by resolution.
Now it's all a mistake.
It was, and it's all been discussed. I just want to just say it one more time for the record. It wasn't just council members showing up thinking they had to. They thought it because of communication
Following
from
your
me,
orders.
which was a communication from our county attorney, which obviously there was confusion
Which
right
means
there,
it's
and
not clear.
that created problems, actually. So,
But some of us didn't believe that, and that's why we kept pushing to hurry up and hire an attorney early, that they were supposed to step back and not be involved. That's why I kept pushing to hire an attorney, so that we would know
What's-
that we
what we're
didn't
supposed
need
to
to do those things. And so, in all fairness, I kept saying they can't be involved, they can't be involved, can't be involved, so.
So if we scratched number 5.
Scratch limit.
If we scratched number 5 and addressed
all
it, addressed it as more of a defining the relationship, and Bob's right, under 10B, we can have a section that kind of defines 2 pieces. 1, what the study committee is, and 2, how they're supposed to interact with the legislative body.
It needs to be absolutely clear in this, the role of the study committee, the role of the existing legislative body, and the role of the petitioners, if there is a petitioner
Right.
involved in this thing. Because once the study committee is launched, petitioners got nothing to say about it.
Right.
And that all those 3 things need to be absolutely clear, because
Okay. So
we
respect.
worked
Yep.
great. We didn't need anybody mucking in our business.
Okay. So respectfully, the question then comes back to us as a group, because this is a joint recommendation. I would like probably the majority to agree with one position or the other, to be fair. So I've heard Walt is definitely in favor. Anybody else would back having that same very clear, this is what
The roles are.
the roles are. Okay, so we've got Walt, Cricket, Jeremy.
Would back just identifying the
No,
roles.
no, not going further. So, Walt, how about you do this? Sorry, instead of doing a straw poll vote, will you make a motion to have the language in there that you want to the extreme or to the not extreme that you want to clarify? Because we're on the fence between kind of clarifying, defining the relationships, and telling them what they can do, but what they definitely should
Are
not
we
do.
talking about replacement language from number 5,
We're-
or are
we're-
we including it in number 10?
We're looking at what his position is before drafting out a statement. If it doesn't have support from the majority of us, then there's no reason in drafting it out. Because otherwise, if it doesn't have the majority, then we shouldn't really include it. That's my feel on it.
I don't know about the motion, but I think it's important that the study committee, what is it, its role needs to be clear.
Okay? And I think everyone
Existing
agrees with that.
legislative body, what is its role in this process?
Okay.
And thirdly, if it's not initiated by the legislative body and it's initiated by petitioners, I think once it's initiated, you've gone through the appointment and then the study committee formulation. Does the petitioners have any role? And if the answer is no, then it
Walt,
needs
how
to say
about
so.
this
Bob,
language?
That'd be fine.
How about this language that defines the study committee as an independent body that does not report to either the existing legislative body or the petitioner?
I think that's fine.
Would that do what you
That
needed
does
to?
not necessarily tell the existing legislative body that they have no role or no say in the process.
Let me take a step. I'm going to say we change 5, and this, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just information I'm getting from Walt. Instead of it saying limit the roles, we could say clearly define the roles of the existing legislative body or the existing study committee, legislative body, and petitioners, something like that. It says clearly define the roles of,
Roles and authority.
roles and authorities of,
That's the word, right there.
I'm plenty
Okay.
good with that.
Okay?
clearly,
That's
alright, so we just
Authority
gotta
is the key
kind of
word.
draft it a little clearly
Authority, there you go. That's
define
Responsibilities and authority.
the
That's good.
responsibilities, shorthand,
Of the legislative body, study committee, and petitioners?
and petitioners, yep.
Okay.
I put study committee first, that's all.
Study committee first.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
But then
That's why I
the question
changed
then becomes, I know
know.
I'm trying to get specific. Because, and the reason why I'm trying to get this specific is because what you're saying is, everyone wants to define study committee. Everyone wants to define the relationships. What you're saying, to me, sounds different what other people are saying, and we're not focusing on that one piece, and that piece is, you want expressly stated that the legislative body, current legislative body, should have nothing to do.
No, I want to list specifically what
They can do.
They can do.
Right, in the three things.
I agree with Bob. It ought to be positive. Make it clear what their responsibility and authority is in this process.
Yeah, their
Which is
responsibility
outlined
is
in
well
statute.
defined.
Perfect. So, are you okay with
Kind of.
accepting?
Yeah, I think,
That's where we're
I think
at.
Jeremy's got
Okay,
right,
okay,
the
so-
right language.
Clearly define the responsibilities and authorities of the existing legislative body, or the existing study committee, legislative bodies, and petitioners in preparing of the plan or
Is the county attorney
No.
perceived as a
We're,
legislative
we're
body?
dealing with that
No, no, no,
separately.
no.
That's separate.
yeah, we're dealing
Okay.
with that separately.
Now we have the heading. How about the body of the paragraph? What does that say?
That's where we get into the more
I
of
think
the meat
that's
of
good enough.
Just
so-
make it just a heading, like we need to clearly define these things,
Yeah.
period, no paragraph.
Because then we have the
Well,
description back
you
in
have-
We
10.
hit them,
Right.
we hit them specifically pretty
Okay.
well.
I think basically so.
Okay, so all it would read is number 5, instead of having a paragraph, it'll say, clearly define responsibility and authorities of the current study committee, legislative body, and petitioners in preparing a plan, period.
clearly define the responsibilities and authorities of the authorities of the
Of the existing.
authority of
Of the study committee.
Yeah.
the study committee.
Legislative body and petitioners. Okay, and there's no paragraph to explain that, just
And
period.
commissioners in this process.
Right, legislative
The
bodies.
legislative body.
Perfect, clear as mud.
In this process.
Gavin, do you have that change?
I think so. I'm gonna have to try and draft before we go too far.
In the
Okay, do you want me to read through it one more time, or,
I would like
I got my notes. I just need to try. and
Okay,
put
perfect.
it coherent soon.
So, this is what, you want me to have what I put down, I put clearly define the responsibility responsibilities and authority, role and responsibilities of the,
Wait,
And-
roll-
No.
no, hang on.
clearly define the
Responsibilities and
responsibility
authority
and authority
of
the existing study committee,
The
Legislative
legislative
body.
body, petitioners in the preparing of the plan. I mean, or.
perfect.
Yeah.
What about process? In the process and the preparing?
in the
With it,
process sounds
within the
good.
process and preparing
I
of the
think,
plan.
I think process is the plan.
It is.
Perfect.
And I would change that to established study committee. The established, not the
Instead of
existing
existing,
study
Or
committee,
just-
established study.
Or just study committee.
Or study committee. And I would encourage Gavin
This is
to
what
make
I'm
that
for
sound good for
Make
us.
this sound better than we do.
Maybe clean that up and make it say what we're trying to say.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's the
That's the legislative body.
that's the
That's
legislative body. That's that's
Are
the
we-
government
County- that's county
legislative body.
legislative body.
All right. So, number 5, we're done.
Yep.
Yep.
How is everyone's mental state? Do we need 5 minutes?
That'd be good.
Huh? We're all good? We're continuing on. All right. Number 6. Election dates are not special elections, but are set by operation of Chapter 17-52A. An amendment to Chapter 17-52A should clarify whether the election date for voting on the plan is automatically established by operation of the change in form statute or is a special election with a date set by the existing legislative body,
County legislative body.
just county legislative body. This matter was addressed by the Grand County Attorney's Review, which found it unlawful for the committee to refer to the election day as the date of adoption of the plan, because setting the date is the duty of the,
Legislative body.
no, of the council, because it's
Right.
referring to the
Yeah.
Grand County.
May I suggest just some very small change in the second line, change in form statute or may be a special election.
Yes.
And then the next sentence, which found it unlawful for the committee to refer to a specific election date. I think that was,
That was one of the ironies, is the way that we drafted the plan, we didn't set the election date, we just referred to it.
right.
Other changes?
Right.
Other changes to this? Just the paragraph, and then we'll get to the next page on it. Seeing none, moving along, applicable statute, 17-52A-4041, deals with information about the election date, which is required in the optional plan's transition plan. Election dates are set in 5013. The statute should expressly address whether the election date is set by the legislative body or by the operation of statute. Any changes there?
That's great.
Perfect. Seeing none, moving on to number 7. Clarify the appointment of the county budget officer. Appointment.
This turned out to not be as big an issue as it was. Initially, Christina had sent me a note saying she thought there was an inconsistency between the change of form of government law and the law dealing with the authority and responsibilities of county auditors. And it actually has more, creates a bigger problem if you're going to a county commission form of government. I'm not sure we need to spend a lot of time on this, but I thought we ought to throw it in there just for discussion and possible clarification.
Do we want to add that language in? Or is anybody...
I think it's good as proposed. I like it.
Moving to number 8, budget appropriations are set by the legislative body, county legislative body. Section, I'd put a section mark, or chapter, whichever one you want. Chapter 17-25A requires the committee to prepare, we need to add a 2 in there, approve and adjust county budget appropriations for the cost of the new form of government and its new officers. Doing so is not realistic when the plan might not go into effect for a, and there's an extra space between a and year, or more. Furthermore, it puts a difficult burden on a layperson committee with no background in county budget needs. Lastly, it conflicts with the County Fiscal Procedures Act, which establishes the budget process and timing and which vests the power to make appropriations in the county governing body.
I want to suggest one change, just because, in fact, some of us have experience in county budgeting. So further, it puts a difficult burden on a layperson committee whose members may have no background.
Me.
Which is fine.
The real big problem in this section is, of course, the use of the word appropriation. It's not even reasonable for that to appear in HB 224.
Yeah.
That seems to me that's kind of a slam dunk one again.
Yep.
I'm not in love with the two ands back to back in the last sentence. It says, lastly, it conflicts with the County Fiscal Procedure Act, which establishes the budget process and timing and which vests the power to make appropriations in the county governing body.
In which.
How about semicolon further invest the power?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Applicable statutes, 17-52A 4041C 6 should be repealed or modified to address costs in a more general way, such as being limited to setting the starting salaries of new officials.
Isn't that in a more specific way?
Yeah, I would say.
That's another issue that might show up in a county attorney review. I know you're not looking forward to further counties, other counties, but it seems to me a county attorney could say, well, setting salaries is clearly a statutory authority of the existing governing body. So maybe the broader question is does the optional plan include starting salaries for the...
I think it does specifically. It calls it out in 224.
Again, the question is, was that an unconstitutional delegation of power to the study committee?
Oh, interesting.
Don't say that to Christina.
Thoughts? Any changes? No changes?
Just
Let me
just a
look.
question.
Okay,
maybe-
Ruth?
Maybe, where it says, the very first of it, in keeping with the ideal that the existing government should not have any role. So government is all of us here.
Oh,
Should
we-
it be existing legislative body? Because government would include the
Are
county
we-
attorney.
Are we still on
Oh,
8
did I
or
jump
9?
ahead?
8.
I'm
We're-
sorry, I
we're on
jumped
8.
ahead.
Okay. Any other changes on number 8?
So is this precluding us from setting the starting salaries?
No, it's asking whether or not we have the authority.
It seems to me we need to be pretty
What if we-
explicit about that.
What if we, is there a difference between the verbiage setting and recommending?
Yes.
Oh, you bet.
Well, there is obviously a difference, but then the question becomes who are we recommending it to? And if the legislature says the county, the study committee can set the salaries, the initial starting salaries, then it's clearly within your authority to do so.
Right. And this is talking more specifically about setting the salary, for example, for the county manager.
Yeah, and it's this.
And the county legislative body members.
Appropriations mean, you've analyzed the income and outflow, and you specifically appropriated in a formal budget document, the annual budget, that this amount of money is going to go to the new county council. That's the unrealistic part.
Bob?
Just the title of it, budget appropriations are set by the legislative body, but isn't the heading should be our budget appropriations set by the legislative body or study committee?
You had a
Who,
question mark?
who sets the,
Yeah, who sets? Thank
who?
There you go.
There you
Who
go.
sets-
Sets. Does that just make me go, who?
Who sets budget appropriations? Question mark.
That's something to be answered for the bill, right?
Yep.
So we changed the title from number 8 to quote, who sets budget appropriations? Question mark. Oh,
So in this process, just thinking back to some of our discussions, I felt pretty comfortable after our discussions about setting the starting salaries for elected members.
right.
I didn't feel at all comfortable with us pinning
Manager.
down the manager's salary. That should be something, in my opinion, that county commission council decides, because they may have to negotiate that. They may need, we don't want to pin them into something that they can't get the right person.
And we'll have further discussion because we're discussing both those things at my request and someone else's request regarding the legislative body salaries, but also Chris Baird wanted to suggest looking at the salary of the managers, and he wanted us to set an actual range for the manager. That was his encouragement. But we will focus on that. I'm just saying later.
You
just
put a
preview.
placeholder in, is
Right.
what you do.
So
Yeah, let's talk about that some more.
we will.
Yeah.
Any other changes to number 8?
Clarification, did that
Yeah.
word general in the, under the applicable statute part get changed to specific?
That was what Mr. Greenberg had hinted at.
Yep.
I'm fine with changing it more specific. Did you catch that, Mr. Anderson?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
We're going to change the word general in applicable statute to the word specific.
Where does that show up, general?
Yep. Address costs in a more specific way. Applicable statute.
Under number 8.
Under number 8, right before number 9.
Oh, you mean the applicable statutes?
Yeah.
To address costs?
In a more specific way.
Okay.
Any conversation on that? If not, we'll read through number 9. Clarify the role of the county attorney in keeping with the ideal that the existing government should not have any role in shaping the optional plan. The legislature should consider another means to deal with the duty of the county attorney to review the plan for legality. This duty ought to be performed in a way that would eliminate any potential for or allegations of personal bias or partisanship, and that would avoid involvement by existing government officials. Have the county attorney general office review the plan, or alternatively, have the county attorney take over redrafting the optional plan after he or she has rejected it as unlawful. Bob?
I want to suggest some changes. I think HB 224 is very clear. So what we're really, the heading is the role of the county attorney.
Okay.
It's not clarify it.
Yeah, it's really clear.
And then
It's clear.
in that first sentence, in keeping with the ideal that existing government should not have any role in shaping the optional plan, the legislature should consider another means to deal with the required review of the plan for legality. And then I would just go period there and strike the rest. I think there's nothing on God's earth that would prevent the allegation of personal bias or partisanship. And I don't think the proposal to have the AG's office do it is necessarily the right way. I don't think it's going to fly. So I'd leave that open. I'd just say, let's find another way, please.
Like
And we talked about that a little bit last week. I have to admit, I can think of no other practical way to have a legal review. I know the AG's office is not going to embrace this idea at all.
Maybe somebody.
And it is, the way it's worded now is obviously very loaded in terms of keeping the existing county government out of this process. If we acknowledge that there is no other practical way to do this, then we have to change our position and say, well, we really do need to have the existing governing, or not the governing body, the existing government, in the form of the county attorney, review this. I think a more interesting question, at least from my perspective, as an attorney trying to provide client services, is I'm not even sure what my role is after Christine says this plan's no good.
Mr. Eder?
She didn't say that.
It's almost as if my
She did. It got kicked
role
back, so
becomes,
yeah, she did.
more or less superfluous, and I do think there's some
Mr. Ederson, the question then would,
logic to having Christina take over that that final redraft.
Mr. Anderson, here would be maybe a different question, would be clarifying what the study committee does when the study committee and the county attorney have differing legal opinions. I know likely the state legislator is probably not going to change what the procedure is, but clarifying what theoretically one could do in that situation. If it's their intent to say, hey, look, that's as far as it goes, if the county attorney says no, and we keep it that way, I think that's perfectly fine if they want to clarify it that way.
How about should consider providing an appeal process to the county attorney's review?
I would agree with that. Just some sort of,
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets at it. And then I'd just strike the rest, huh?
right. That would cover any of my thoughts. And that way, it would clarify, Mr. Anderson, your position as well as to what one does in the event that there is that. I think I saw Walt, and then Jeremy, and then,
Who would you appeal it to?
I don't know.
That's
That's
what
for
they're
them
gonna
to
say.
figure
I'm
out.
gonna throw something out. What is the definition of the ombudsman?
Right now, there's only one ombudsman in the state statute.
What property rights, right?
Real property guy,
Yeah.
Brett Bateman. There's been talk about that in the legislature on a variety of situations. But there's only the real property.
That's all we got.
so from my perspective, I don't think that the legislature, they're not going to change that, but I think that would make me feel better that for you, Mr. Anderson, and as a fellow attorney, I understand the frustration that one can be in a position like that. Just to say, hey, look, this is what we faced. We don't know if that's
We wish there'd been a review process.
we wish there's another way to go about it,
An appeal process.
an appeal process. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so that's what I would suggest. Bob and my comments together.
I agree. You get,
I was just going to say, don't be so sure that the legislature is not going to be willing to address the role of the county attorney. There has been major friction in both Utah County and San Juan County, both of whom are in the middle of optional plans, a conflict between the county commission and the county attorney. And there may be an impetus to take the county attorney out of it altogether.
Well, I just, two things. One is I don't want to suggest there's an appeal process when there's no place to do an appeal process. You don't want to try to create something that there's really nothing in place to do that now. And Gavin's point right there, let's don't assume that this is a dead issue with not having the local county attorney. And you know, that's probably a discussion for some other time, but there's perceptions that you shouldn't talk about the process and your feelings if you're going to be reviewing it.
Cricket?
Well, I just wondered why couldn't they put it where you could approach another county attorney to look at the legal? Because they still wouldn't be fighting with her because she wouldn't be involved.
yeah,
It's being honest, and Mr. Anderson has more experience than I would in this. It's a small group of attorneys, and you're asking Brent Langston, Kendall Laws, Alex Goebel, one of them to review a colleague's work. Sometimes that's really
But it
difficult.
wouldn't be a colleague's work if she's not involved at all. If she's not
Oh,
involved
oh,
at
oh,
all,
you're-
take them
I
out.
was taking
Go
that
to
as a
someone else
recommendation we would have.
completely.
Go to a third party.
A third
You- you-
disinterested third party
Just
that's
throwing this out
not.
there, but is there any system within the state government that has review boards, or
You run
I mean-
into that situation in a
Yeah.
criminal context when there is a conflict of interest.
right?
When, for example, they've done it for Grand County, and Brent Langston's been the person that's been stepped in and helped out when Andrew Fitzgerald had previously represented like a criminal defendant.
Right.
And then there's a subsequent criminal prosecution about a defendant that he represented, and you just take it out of office and you give it to someone else.
That's what I'm
There's
saying.
a couple I won't say which ones.
Because I just look at it, I mean, I'm just theorizing here, maybe I'm going in the weeds a little too much, but my problem with the situation that we've been put in has always been a conflict of interest clause, because, I mean, Christina works with the council, that's her job, and here we are being mandated to say, okay, you stay out at this point in time, but there's opinions and personalities that are involved. How can you not have some form of bias in it? So it's, to me, it's just like, how do you limit that? How do you get away from that? I don't know that we can, but maybe an independent review from not one, but maybe there's a couple that are involved and, you know, and it's taken out of house, kind of like what Steven's talking about legally. You know, when you have a conflict of interest, maybe it's put before a review. I don't know. But
Cricket?
that-
So we say,
theoretically,
clarify the role of the county attorney, consider removing the county attorney and replacing some disinterested third party.
or
Board, a board. I mean, if this is going to happen, more than one county, other people are going to be dealing with this too. So why can't they create a board like what we have that just looks at that? And it wouldn't matter because you wouldn't be fighting, I mean, because
constitutional review
yeah,
board.
that's what it is. You're just making sure it's legal, not that we agree with it countywide. It's legally. So maybe, college
How about
professors.
this for language? In keeping with the ideal existing government should not have any role shaping the optional plan, the legislature should consider other means to deal with the required legal review, the required review of the plan for legality. In
Disinterested third party.
yes, including the
limited to,
Including a disinterested.
third party, yes, or a appeals process and/or an appeals process.
I just, yeah. Well,
Yes, I think this would not have been a problem if it weren't the timing stuff. If we'd have had the time to get this in, get it reviewed, and have a chance to fix these things quickly afterwards, we may be turning this into a much more complex, especially review situation that maybe isn't necessary, because if she'd have had this review and we'd have had a month to fix it, we'd have had it fixed. We could have argued it through, we'd have had it fixed, and we'd have moved on.
I don't know that we would have with the district situation. I
Well-
think fundamentally that's where we
Okay,
have
but
a
the
huge
district
issue.
situation, you know, the district situation, we're gonna get fixed. In this thing, we're gonna tell them, you gotta fix this district situation, and say who is responsible for
Yeah,
doing it.
but-
That fixes that, but the rest of this thing would have been much easier, contrary to what has been said, that there were 4 significant findings. There were not 4 significant findings. There was one that we need to talk about. The other 3 were typos almost. To
I
call
agree.
them significant is ridiculous, in my opinion. And so I think maybe we fix this without trying to invent some new review process and getting it out of county control, this county's control. I would have felt a whole lot better if I'd have had the time to fix, or we'd have had the time to fix what was pointed out to us. Because only one of those things, and we're going to fix that.
I've got Jeremy, then Cricket.
You know, and here's my thing, is that in Christina's own words, she went to 2 different attorneys. Yeah, I mean, from what I heard from her was 2 different attorneys. One in Park City, one that worked on Park City. She had a friend in Park City.
And she talked to Morgan.
Or she talked to Morgan, and then she also talked to the gentleman who's involved with everything that's San Juan.
Yeah.
And a constitutional.
And a
expert.
constitutional, and that's the constitutional expert guy that, I think that's the one that she
Anyways.
was. But my point is that she got one that was kind of, you know, this is what we're doing in Morgan, and then the other one was like, no, they have the right, and Park City guy was like, I think they have the right to choose the districts, and then the guy who helped in Blanding said, no, I think they don't have that right. So I mean, and the old adage, if you got 10 lawyers in a room to look at one piece of law, you'd have 10 different answers of what that law meant. I mean, there's some
You'll
truth.
have 12 different.
You'll have 12 I mean, there's some reality to that's what we're. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what we're at
That's
the
why
mercy of.
Judges get the big
And
bucks.
that's the truth. That's why you have judges too. And I just look at it as, okay, so this is what the process is now. I can't change that. But if I gave a recommendation, maybe some type of appeal process or review process of that, whether it's the county attorney or an independent, if somebody were to say, you know, I don't agree with that, there should be a check and balance to be able to go, a little higher up the ladder without having to create a whole lawsuit, the rigmarole that comes with it. And I think that's all we're suggesting, and whether they do it or not, who knows. But
Well, I think that's what
Very
this
good then,
is.
Bob.
This is a suggestion, and the point is to try to define the lines of what the county's role is. And so their role is this, and this. Well, it shouldn't be the final review. And I have nothing against Christina. I like her. I've worked with her a lot. I'm just saying she's not a disinterested third party. She's not. And that's what we need. I mean, if we're supposed to be somebody who has no, bacon in the breakfast, it shouldn't be our county attorney. Because all you're doing is making sure it's legal.
yeah.
Bob?
So that's all the rule is.
Constitutional.
Constitutional.
and legal.
You know, there is a methodology that's used in situations similar to this, which is the study committee picks an attorney, which we have, the county attorney, and the two of them choose a third attorney.
Yeah, arbitration.
Yeah,
That's actually a really,
That's not a bad suggestion.
I'm going to go on record to say that's a great idea, Bob.
Oh my gosh, this is just scary.
Did you, Mr. Anderson, did you catch the idea for an arbitration essentially?
Me, yeah, absolutely, sounds like a good idea.
Perfect.
I like it too.
So maybe,
Some options, like
so to add the
possibly,
language, I
possibly.
think we're almost there with the language. So the last two sentences would read, the optional plan, the legislative should consider another means to deal with the required review of the plan for legality, including a disinterested party and/or appeals process, such as an arbitration.
using an arbitration
Using
model.
using an arbiter, period. And then, did you catch how both the study committee attorney and the county attorney would select a third disinterested arbiter to determine the legality of to resolve the disagreement?
Provision in there too?
Yes, yes.
That's great.
Anyone disagree with that? And scratch all the other language on the plan, on the plan.
And change the title, just ditch clarify and say,
Right.
the role of the county attorney.
Maybe the role of the county attorney slash,
I would go
Appeals?
an effort to try and make each of these headings an actual sentence and not end any of them with a question mark.
Well-
I'd be quite upset about it.
well, I want it to be the role of the county attorney and arbitration clause, or the role of the county attorney and resolving disputes or different.
In the review process.
Yeah.
We trust you, Gavin Anderson. How
The
about
role
you?
of the county attorney within the review process.
Yeah, the issue I was just raising is, it's very clear in HB 224. County attorney reviews, end of story.
That's a great.
So clarity is not what we're looking for.
Revising the role.
Oh,
How about, there we go,
revising,
Ah, there you go, revising the rule.
Yeah,
Yep, that's better.
Okay, we've got one page to go.
So it's the arbitration process and not any other review.
We said appeal such as an arbitration process. So
Okay.
we
Okay, and so we're talking about eliminating everything after that?
Yes.
Yes.
Be Pretty well everything on page 5?
except for the
Yes.
applicable statute, we can keep that there because it just refers to the role of the county attorney.
Yeah, all right.
Number 10. Other potential clarifications. Item A. Public hearings and outreach by the committee are mandatory before the optional plan is completed, but are only permissive afterwards. Maybe after or afterwards. Should further public notice be required? Section 17-52A-4035A. A voter information pamphlet is permissive. Should it be mandatory? 17-15A-5021. Bob?
permitted. Two things. One is, I don't believe a voter information pamphlet is required in any other situation. Am I right about that, Gavin?
No, I think there are, Bob, there's some. I might be wrong, but I think bond elections,
Oh, yeah.
processes require voter information.
I think so. I
Okay.
think that's right.
And I have to admit, I don't feel very strongly about this. I do think it's probably a good idea to have it permissive, but I just wanted to make sure that it came to your attention.
I'd say I'm way in favor of permissive.
Permissive, okay. Any changes to item A, and everyone's okay to keep it?
Well, I think it'd be a matter of actually striking item A altogether.
Oh, striking, okay.
Yep.
Everyone strike?
Yep.
So the new item A, and then we got item B, C, and D. Okay. Item A, include a provision in the statute that clarifies the role of the study committee. It is not an advisory body composed of public-spirited citizens, but is vested by statute with significant legal authority to draft a comprehensive optional plan of county government for submission to the voters. It does not recommend the new optional plan to the existing government.
And this is me kind of addressing an issue that Walt's brought up a couple times.
I think
I
it's
think
good.
that covers it.
Yep.
Anyone want changes? Seeing none.
You nailed it, fella.
Moving to item B.
So you want B as is left in?
Yep.
Yep.
It becomes A.
Yeah, it becomes A.
Okay.
We've killed A. So revise, or new B, which is old C, 17-52A, provides that the existing legislative body, quote, may, end quote, adopt necessary ordinances to make the transition possible. If the existing government has any significant role in the preparation of the optional plan, the adoption of the needed ordinances and resolution should be mandatory, with an appropriate county legislative body process and timeline enacted as well. Section 17-52A 5031E.
So Jim, this is my concern with Christina's approach. If the county council has the authority to set either an election date or a boundaries for the districts, there's got to be some kind of a
Mandate.
fence around them to tell them how to do it, when to do it, what process, what standards, what timeline.
Right.
Just to leave it completely, blowing in the wind is not going to be very helpful.
Bob?
Especially if they're reluctant.
I'm fully in support of this, except I think it should be if the existing county government has any significant role in the implementation of the optional plan, not the preparation.
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
talking about implementing
Right.
That's
here.
right.
Well, that's, do you define setting the election date or the district boundaries as implementing?
I think, well, it's.
How
then
about
maybe-
slash
Yeah. then
preparation slash?
Preparation and implementation.
Okay,
So both words going in there, implementation/preparation, or vice versa.
yeah.
Any other changes to old C, new B? Everyone approve?
Yes.
Okay, moving to old D, new C. If a significant amendment is made by the legislature, it should grandfather all existing county efforts which are now in the works. This would include Grand County and 5 other counties now involved at the same point in the procedure, some point in the procedure. Proposed cutoff point, a study committee election, Utah County.
I'm really concerned about what Utah County and San Juan are going to affect this bill, but, everybody said so far, and actually there's existing language in HB 224, maybe sufficient by itself, that says, don't interfere with an existing process. I can't remember what the trigger date is in the existing statute. It seems like it was a pretty reasonable one.
Then maybe,
There's a number of cutoff dates, landmarks. It could be when a proposal is submitted by petitioners or by commission resolution to the county clerk. It could be when you have a study committee election, when you have a study committee form. We may want to give some thought to what that trigger point would be, after which there can be no interference.
Do we, playing devil's advocate, do we care about anybody else besides ourselves on this one? Should we
Nope.
just say that we definitely don't want them, to interfere with the pending Grand County process?
Well, it looks a little
Shut-
self-interested if you put,
Yeah.
nobody will interfere with Grand County's process.
I mean, this is coming from the Grand County experience.
We just want to change HB 224 so that it doesn't trip up anybody, I would think. But instead of in the works, I might say,
That's what I'm saying. is we
I
have to
think,
define
I
what
think
the
it ought to
purpose
be,
is.
I think it ought to be when a study committee is formed.
If it's been voted on and formed,
Yes.
yeah, oh my gosh, stay out of it.
Yep.
or,
know, if-
or
if-
have begun the process
Or
for change of government.
First
If
meeting.
you have not filed,
Right.
you're in a gray
So-
area. If you haven't picked your study committee
Election
yet,
to form a study
you're in
committee,
the gray
pick
area.
up their study committee. Utah County has not had a study committee election or a study committee formed yet. They're still in the process where a petition has been filed filed with the county
Do you want
clerk.
to appoint the committee, or do you want the study committee formed?
Well, I would say if you haven't formed, I mean,
That
truthfully,
becomes a
where
question.
you, I think it's more of a legal
when does
question.
the work begin?
When does it become more legally binding? Is it once you have filed, you've gotten your petitions, you've gotten your signatures, you've filed that with the county clerk?
It's like vested in real
That's,
estate.
I mean, that's how I look at it. That's how I would look at it.
That's
You,
actually the big issue in Utah County, and that's the argument the commission has had with their county attorney, is that the county attorney says, once the citizen petition has been filed with the county clerk, no election or anything, once that's been filed, then county commission, you're out of the
Yeah.
loop now.
yeah, that's typical, I mean, they got their one pick.
It's like vesting
Yeah.
in planning and zoning.
But I mean, the reality of it is the, and I'm just getting into the weeds here with the Utah thing, but the way I look at it is the county commissioners in Utah County serve at behest of the people. If they've gotten enough signatures to take something and file it and take it to the ballot, and those signatures are legit and that process is initiated, yeah, they need to stay out of it.
So why don't we just say
So-
when the process is initiated?
Once
How-
it's
how
if it's-
about
Filed
like
with the
this?
clerk.
once that process has been filed,
Well,
Right.
once the petition
initiated
has been-
either by a petition being filed or a resolution being
He
passed.
said it
Well, they
was
still have
filed
to-
with the
I think
clerk.
they still have to file it with the clerk, though, right? Even if a
Yeah.
resolution's passed, they still got to file it.
So if we scratched and changed C to, quote, if a significant amendment is made by the legislature, it should grandfather all existing county efforts that have been filed, period.
Have been filed with the county clerks.
Yes, with the county clerk.
With the respective county clerks.
And that is past.
That's it,
Change.
period.
Okay?
I mean, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Item E, further discussion and committee decision. Is there any appetite for a process to extend the life of the study committee? Under some,
Mr.
The
Chairman,
Mockingbird
yes.
Memorial provision.
okay,
Memorial.
Bob.
Memorial.
Yeah, I would suggest that we say, the how and when a study committee is dissolved needs to be clarified.
And I would say after it's on the ballot, after the vote, at the ballot. Because that way, if you have to go and do some open houses and stuff, you still have that, you're still on the committee to that point, once it makes it on the ballot.
There's kind of three landmarks we could potentially focus on.
Election day.
Number
Election
one,
day.
once the study committee, or once the officer plan has been approved and set for election. Number two is the election. Number three is if a study committee rejects any proposal to change the form of government. And then the other one is the 1 year that we've already got in place.
how about we put how and when to dissolve the study committee, question mark, options, and then we give them the three
Oh, yeah,
options.
yeah. I like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I don't have,
And can you say no life sentences
yes,
in parentheses?
okay.
You can always
Wake up with
resign.
cold sweats. Bob's words. It's never
So,
going to end.
any other changes on the item B that we've gone through? Anyone else have any desire to change anything else? Yay, nay, Bob? Nope.
Hey,
Okay.
Thank you, Gavin. This
Can
is
I
great.
just bring up,
Well, I'll try to get you another draft and, by all means, go through it with a fine tooth comb and let's make sure we get it fixed.
Right,
And
and
we could just set it aside for a while, we can work on a cover letter, maybe we'll want to come back and look at it again after our cover letter's done.
so one thing on the, I was going to move on to the cover letter briefly, and just so we can all conceptualize what the cover letter is going to be. I've been taking just the notes. So essentially, the cover letter is going to have two main issues. One is going to be opining about how complex and cumbersome the bill is and how much better it could be written. Number two would be
Much better.
role of the existing legislative body, what role it has, and the question about, specifically about districts. Those are really the big things that we would focus on. I would encourage us only to keep it at those three things because we keep our focus on that. Anyone have,
The letter really needs to be very statesmanlike, very positive.
Yep.
I'll do a draft, but this is one that really needs to have your fingerprints on it as committee members. And so let's not be bashful about.
I think what we want to say in the cover letter is we believe that the process could be improved.
yes. Yep. Ruth, did you have comments
just,
on the cover letter?
I don't-
Opportunities.
I don't know if it's, needs to be added in here, but you all had the question whether you could even go into closed session, whether you could sue. I mean, there were some other things that came up too that I don't know if you
Right.
care.
Yes,
but-
closed session, we
Sure.
are covered by the Open Public Meetings Act,
Yeah, I think the
and the lawsuit issue, I think,
Right.
is,
I think we're good on that. I don't have any desire to go into more detail on that.
I'm just saying for,
No,
for
sure.
future, I mean, can the study committee
Go into
sue?
oh,
I mean,
does
the funding is from the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So-
So-
that's
no.
Insane,
yeah.
but yeah.
Here, but that is a question about who would pay for the arbitration, or how would we go
The
into
county.
the arbitration?
Well, presumably have to come out of our budget, presumably.
Right. Would we have? I guess if they wrote it in that we had the standing to do arbitration, if that was the procedure, then it would be obvious that we could do that.
Yeah, I would say so too.
So I don't. I think we've addressed. Any other thoughts? Walt, you just came back. Did you have anything else that you want to do on item B? Okay. So the cover letter, we just went through that. Any other general comments on the cover letter? Nope. Okay. Mr. Anderson, we're gonna.
Another thing to be thinking about, well, number one is timing on sending this out. I think we're okay if we do it anytime in November. The other question is we need to start thinking of a mailing list that you'll want to send your letter to.
We've got it.
Can we
Yeah, Bob?
finalize this and approve
Yeah.
the final document and cover letter at our currently agenda-less November 1st meeting?
You have nothing on your agenda right now. So-
We'll talk. We'll
So-
get that. I'll meet with Ruth, but yes, we can.
Is
put
that a
on there.
reasonable timeline for you, Gavin?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
1 week?
Could I get a rundown on what our future meetings are going to be?
Yes, I've got it right here, and I can send this to you. So
Okay.
nothing is established for this coming next Friday, other than what we're just talking about. November 8th is review and amend, this is all about the districts, yeah. Wait a minute, no, that got changed, sorry. That got changed.
It's on the 15th.
Sorry, this was about compensation of the council, compensation of the county manager, and also amending the recommendation and report.
So salary is on the 8th, with the salary of the county manager.
And this,
Is the salary
And
not
county
district?
council members?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, districts is on the 15th.
District's on the 15th.
districts is on the 15th. Christina has said she could have a written report ready for you all then. I don't think I think she's clear that she's not going to be presenting it to you all.
Right.
In person.
Yeah, we
But I
met.
did want to go back to, on the 8th, I don't know if you would want to move this, because it seems like a lot, but anyway, reviewing and amending recommendation and report document is also on the 8th. Okay, so districts on the 15th.
You know,
The other thing on the
I don't know
15th,
if
from
we
your
really
prior
need-
motions,
It's too early, probably.
the other thing on the 15th you may want to move, since that's your districting one, is reviewing the rough draft of the optional plan. And then on December 3rd, so then you've got several weeks break until December 13th, which would be addressing suggested edits to the plan as provided by the agreement of the county attorney, the clerk auditor, and Gavin.
Is Mr. Baird available for the 1st to move up salaries to that date?
What's the
I don't
timing
know.
on his budget process, Ruth? Do you know?
Yes, I do know. The budget board just finished meeting yesterday. He has to submit a tentative budget to the county council before before November 1st.
So it's probably a crunch time if we would ask him to come do salaries on the 1st.
And then the county council will have a budget workshop on the November 6th, the day after Election Day.
Was there anything anybody else wanted to discuss on? Because what I'm looking at is we've got salaries, if we can't bring it forward because of Mr. Baird's schedule, then we've got salaries in districts are on the 15th. Everything else is really just finalizing the plan. I don't know, apart from community outreach that we could talk about on the 1st. I don't know what else.
Just finalizing
Yeah.
this
So-
document
so
and
I-
the cover letter.
Put this as finalized.
That would make a nice 1-hour meeting.
Yes!
So finalize the document on the 1st. Is that okay with that being the only thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure because your concern was that you were going to be gone. You only have the 2 first November meetings, so I was trying to get as much on there as we could.
Who's
But
not
I
going
don't
to be
think
here
we're
on the
prepared to
8th?
go after anything else.
I don't think so either.
This is a little different than what Gavin just suggested, though. He suggested working on it some more next week, working on a cover letter, coming back to it. So
Yeah, first.
The first, he was shooting to finalize.
All of that on the first? Oh,
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
what
it
you
was
said.
several weeks. Okay,
He's fast.
He's on it.
good.
Okay, so I guess really the only thing that we're gonna be handling on the first is this, and Marcy, did you want to look at concrete community outreach items yet? No, okay,
And
well,
I had that for the December 20th.
I know, I'm just
No
trying to pull
idea.
something else
I'm
forward.
on the first, but here are the
Okay.
8th and 15th.
Okay, so that's what's going to be, did you catch that? Sorry, I kind of muddled it. So November 1st is finalizing this cover letter / packet to the legislative body. November 8th is going to be reviewing legislative body salary, reviewing the salary of the county manager,
Both those on the 8th.
both those on the 8th, with review of the optional plan and review of the, review of the recommendations, which we'll probably have to move to the end anyways, because we can't give them all of their recommendations until we have the plan finalized. So probably just salary on the 8th. The 15th will be the districts.
Christina will be for that, available for that meeting.
No, the reason why is
It's a written
Maybe.
report.
she's going to give us information, but I don't think that we need her here to make the decision. I think I've talked with, I don't know, if people want her to be here, we could have her
We
here.
already decided no.
Well, yeah, that's what we did. Yeah, we already decided we didn't want that.
Okay.
And then we'll have to find whatever dates that we have in late November, early December to finalize the plan. That's what the goal is.
Yeah, we'll need to revise the report and recommendation.
Right.
Part of that process.
Right. Okay, so nothing else on item B? Consent agenda items, action items, none. Discussion items, none. Discussion on possible action items on study strategy, none. Public hearing, none. Future considerations, anybody?
Can I come back to the question of the report and recommendation real quick?
Yep.
If you recall, one of the issues that Christina brought up, and she didn't say it was improper, is that in the report and recommendation, we said that the current form of government needs to be changed, which is the bare statutory language in HB 224. But she said, well, shouldn't you put some reasons in there? And I thought about that. I thought we could just do some just generic suggestion that, it confuses the role of executive legislative branch. It makes it so we have less confidence in the distinction between the two roles. Anything like that sounds good to the committee, or other ideas you'd want to include? It may not be necessary.
Didn't we include last time that it was, I think we put the flowery language of, in order to obtain and to have a more perfect, county council, but we did have that language to be more efficient, more economic, I mean, we had that in our letter, and I'm remembering Marcy recommending some of the words.
And that's just advice from Christina.
I know.
We don't need to follow it.
I feel like that's the Star Wars moment where it's a trap.
Question, is there language in there that just says we're having to change our form of government? We
Yeah.
have to
HB
by law, and we're
224.
trying to comply by
Exclamation
law.
point.
We don't even want to.
No.
No one wanted this
But
except.
I don't
one
think we
person
want to
that I
include
know.
that language, though. Right. Any other thoughts?
They changed the law.
Divine revelation.
Anything else? Bob, Mr. Anderson, Walt, Cricket, Judy, anybody? No. Okay. No more future consideration. Any motions to close this out? Made.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning at the time is 2:17. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 2:17 on Friday, October 25th.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job.
I will be attending the
Next week?
Bob, that would got me good.
It was fun. Still is.
There's litmus test for dark sense.
I keep thinking about, I only got 2 more planning commission meetings.
You're off